Okay. I guess I can check this out.
Picture this. You've just gotten up at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning and are getting ready to go to work for the day.
Huh.
You go downstairs, make yourself a cup of coffee, and look out of your window at the beauty of your cul-de-sac. There's something weird amongst the cookie-cutter houses and pristinely manicured lawns today, however. A large black SUV that you don't recognize is slowly making its way down the street, heading directly for your house. You squint, seeing two men wearing sunglasses and button shirts sitting in the front seats, one of whom is staring at a laptop. Wires running from the laptop into the back of the passenger compartment are visible, but because of the tinted windows, you can't see what they're connected to. Just as you start to reach for your home defense 40mm autocannon, however, one of the men notices you. He gives you a wave as the car turns around and begins to drive away. Confused, you step out onto your porch to get a better view of the car. That's when you notice the antenna on the roof and something even stranger in the trunk. Through the glint of sunlight reflecting off of the metal paneling, you can just make out a set of metal cylinders covered in wires and blinking lights. You think that you even see some sort of gas leak out of one of them, but the car pulls around the corner and out of your view before you can get a better look. What the hell did you just see?
You did.
Now, I know I'm never going to beat the Fed sleeper agent charges after this video, but I promise that I'm a completely normal and well-adjusted member of society. Well, as well-adjusted as I possibly can be. Anyways, as part of my tenure at the Second Science Shack, the government told me to go and collect radiation data in various areas of interest. Before the conspiracy theorists really go apeshit, however, I should clarify that this wasn't the type of radiation that turns frogs gay. To be clear, that doesn't exist. And was instead a type of radiation.
Okay. Do you actually know there actually is something to the that turn the friggin' frogs gay? So there are chemicals that will cause certain kinds of frogs to basically change their gender. So it's not they're turning the friggin' frogs gay, but there are... I forget exactly what it is, but there are chemicals that basically turn the frogs trans. So that is an actual thing.
Radiation that messes with certain electronics like medical scanners and cell towers. I was just surveying these areas for the EPA to make sure that somebody could build utilities like a hospital or wireless service for the nearby residents.
Close enough.
Now, in order to actually do my job, I needed to use radiation detectors. Unfortunately, these aren't the easiest things to work with. For one, they need to be really cold in order to work properly. This means they're full of either liquid nitrogen or liquid helium. Because these detectors are full of these liquids, they get really heavy, on the order of...
Sorry, is that a... Sorry.
200 to... Because in order to work properly, this means they're full of either liquid nitrogen or liquid helium. Because these detectors are full of these liquids, they get really heavy, on the order of 200 to 300 pounds depending on the design. That's a little bit too much for a cripple like me to carry on their back Death Stranding style, especially if you need to use
another game we need to play.
A survey. A quick aside, but the liquid nitrogen and liquid helium that are used in these detectors are pretty interesting in and of themselves. To keep these liquids cold, they're stored in insulated metal containers called dewars. Dewars are mostly full of liquid, but some of the liquid is allowed to boil off to form a gas, which helps push the liquid through the dewer's pipes as needed. If you don't see why this would work, imagine boiling water in a pot. If you put a lid with a hole on it, you can hear the steam escaping.
Right.
If you put a lid without a hole on it, it takes some effort to make sure the lid stays on the pot, because you're fighting the pressure of the steam. These dewars use the same idea, but instead of gas pushing against a lid, the gas pushes the liquid through the tubes and out of the dewar. Because of this, big liquid nitrogen dewars can come at different internal pressures, including some ridiculously high pressure ones. How high pressure, you ask? Well, someone in my internship fit the nozzle we use for the low pressure dewar on the high pressure one, and when he opened the valve, the nozzle shot through the drywall and embedded itself a solid 2 centimeters into the wood framing behind.
Probably a good idea he wasn't standing in front of it then. Right. Yeah, that would probably kill you.
Oops. You might have noticed that I've only been talking about liquid nitrogen so far. You might even have had personal experience with liquid nitrogen, maybe at a science museum exhibit or some really fancy restaurant dessert. These days, it's a pretty widely available item after all, one that you can even get mail ordered to your house so long as you have enough money. If you search for buying liquid helium, and specifically the isotope liquid helium-3, however, you'll find almost no vendors. Well, no reputable vendors.
Some guy in Alabama,
As it turns out, liquid helium-3 is much harder to make than liquid nitrogen. And, in fact, if you don't want to go digging around to find random tiny pockets of helium gas in the Earth's crust, you'll have to go through the United States government. All man-made helium-3 comes from the radioactive decay of tritium, a radioactive element that has actually found its way into various consumer devices. Tritium's radioactivity allows it to glow in the dark, making it a popular material for watch faces and gun sights. But what most people don't know is that tritium's main use in the United States is for creating boosted nuclear bombs. To be very loose and unscientific, tritium helps add extra radioactivity into a detonating nuclear bomb, making it release even more energy and create an even bigger blast. Getting your hands on helium-3 is an extremely difficult process, not because it's dangerous in and of itself, but because it's only ever found as a byproduct of nuke testing. A single liter of this, if you can get through all the paperwork, will set you back nearly $3,000. So about
that's a lot cheaper than I would have thought it would be.
The same per liter as anti-acne medication. Anyways, carrying around these 200-pound detectors full of liquid nitrogen and liquid helium is clearly too much for any normally proportioned human. Consequently, these detectors are usually strapped to a vehicle of some sort.
Right.
According to my boss, they actually used to use an entire 18-wheeler truck to house the detectors back when the detectors weren't as efficient and you needed more of them. I can only imagine the apoplectic fit deep state conspiracists must have had at seeing men in suits drive an unmarked semi-truck with antennas poking out of it through their neighborhood.
Dude, this is how the Skinwalkers got JFK. I knew I always liked to spend my alimony money on that bug-out bunker after Pizzagate. They finally come for my Funko Pops.
Anyways, over time, better software and hardware got developed to the point where you only needed a handful of these detectors to do the necessary measurements. Consequently, if you have a big enough SUV, you can actually just jam everything in the back of it. And so, the Nuke Truck was born. Interestingly, however, the Nuke Truck was not an official government vehicle. In spite of the fact that we were government employees and all of the detectors crammed into the Nuke Truck bore government insignia, the SUV was not owned by the government and thus had no outside markings. A concerned neighbor would have no way of knowing that we were not, in fact, the ATF coming to shoot their dog, but rather one of the friendly government agencies just trying to make sure they could build a hospital down the road. The closest thing we had was a manifest listing the total value of everything in the car, which our boss kind of just told us should be enough to keep us out of jail if we ever got pulled over.
What?
Even this wasn't in the original version of the Nuke Truck and was only added after an incident the month before I arrived. At the time, a team of researchers were taking the Nuke Truck out to a major American landmark. I won't say which one out of fear of somebody doxing me, but it was a place with a lot of security.
Right.
One of the police officers there noticed the blacked out SUV
They're like, is this a bomb?
with weird blinking lights and hissing cylinders in the back and immediately panicked, thinking that it was a weapon of mass destruction. The researchers were detained for hours as they called their boss, who called their boss, who called their boss, and so on, until it eventually reached somebody in the Pentagon, who told the cops that, no, these researchers weren't trying to blow up a national monument, they were just trying to collect some data. Needless to say, I didn't exactly have much confidence in my own safety driving the Nuke Truck around. Honestly, perhaps less so than if I had been driving an actual truck full of nukes around. In consideration of this, the other researchers and I spent some time brainstorming and eventually developed a countermeasure for people's concerns.
Okay.
We called it the smile and wave. Think about it. When an FBI agent trying to brainwash your dog through coded messages and his kibble wave at you through the window of his surveillance van, the smile and wave instantly exculpated
yes, if you're having a schizophrenic break.
from any perceived wrongdoing and put people at ease. I mean, we could have been dragging a bloodied body bag in the middle of the night wearing ski masks, and I'm pretty sure that with a smile and wave, we would have gotten off scot-free. Ultimately,
Is this kind of like the, you can get in anywhere with a high-vis vest and a jacket? Is that the logic we're using here?
I spent 3 weeks going around to various neighborhoods and disturbing the peace by cosplaying as a Fed with nuclear weapons. Taken alone, it was a monumentally boring task, but it was helpful in one very important respect. For a variety of reasons that mostly boil down to me being slow to warm up to people, I'm not a particularly talkative person in real life. Being
I
crammed
know
in a
that
car
feeling.
with someone for 9 hours a day, however, forced me to learn how to chat with people who I didn't necessarily have anything in common with. This came in particularly handy when I was applying to graduate schools this past fall, as it allowed me to talk to professors without having to psych myself up for an hour and a half beforehand. So I'm actually very thankful for the Nuke Truck in spite of all the hijinks. I mean, you can debate sort of how useful that was since I got rejected from every physics grad program I applied to except for my own school, so maybe it didn't work out all that well, but that's a story for another time. Couldn't end a storytime video on too high of a note, could I? Be sure to like and sub for more. I'm really gonna start needing the YouTube money now.
What the fuck was this video? What the fuck was this video? Sure, sure, I guess. I'll be back in a moment. I'll be back in a moment. I guess we'll check something else out after this. That was a video, I guess.